At 11:11, when we got the name George Jameson off the We Are the Dead Twitter profile, I mean, the first thing I wanted to know was he had died on May 8th, 1915. And so I thought, what had happened on May 8th?
The first thing I do is go to his military files to see what his attestation papers will tell us and what his military file will tell us. And that can be a very rich source of material, but in George's case, it wasn't.
He was a First World War war dead, which makes it more difficult right off the bat. Then we go and we get his basic kind of war records, and we realize that he died at 30 with no children.
His notice about his death, often they have a description of how someone died, but in George's case, it just said killed in action. And there was no description of how he was killed, or even really in what battle he was involved in.
Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry Regiment that George Jameson was in was on the Ypres salient, which was a bulge in the Allied lines around the town of Ypres, Belgium. And on May 8th, the morning of May 8th at 4 a.m., the Germans started an intense bombardment. And I got this by going on to the war diaries. The regimental war diaries are all online now, and you can read almost minute by minute what happened that morning.
His next of kin was his brother, who lived in Winnipeg, and that was William Jameson. And so we started doing some research on William Jameson, since he was our best lead, because we really needed to find George Jameson's relatives if we were ever going to get any kind of story about George's life.
Jameson was a private, so he didn't really figure in the official war account. He's just listed as one of the other ranks that were killed or went missing that day. But when you read the war diaries, you get a sense of what these men went under. This German shelling started at 4 a.m. and then after about an hour of that, the German troops came over through no man's land charging, and we have a book here at the Citizen Library that is the regimental history of the Princess Pats, and it had first-person accounts of the battle of watching Germans, coming over wave after wave of fallen soldiers, and the trenches being blown to pieces, and the troops were retreating, and the commander, the Princess Patricia, was severely wounded, and I think there was almost 400 of the regiment were either killed, missing, or wounded that day.
And at this point, we don't know. There's no children, and I even tweet out, doesn't seem like he had children, but he had 6 sisters, so hopefully they're living descendants. I said, we have a promising lead. His sister Fanny Jameson died on May 31st, 1976, when she was 90 years old. We need to find Fanny Jameson. Still looking, but she might have been in England when she died. Fanny Jameson went nowhere. We couldn't find anything on her, couldn't find obits, we couldn't find anything about Fanny. So we're tracking down family there through Ancestry, but we keep hitting dead ends. Then someone, because we're crowdsourcing this on Twitter, someone points out that his the second brother, John, who died in 1910, had a whole long list of descendants that are alive today. So, a Twitter user, is very, very helpful, and it starts pulling birth records of people with the last name Jameson. So we get to this point where we have our guy George, who's got an older brother named John. John Jameson dies in 1910. John Jameson has a son, who he named John because he was inventive. So John Jameson II, but he has at least one son named Raymond, and Raymond is still alive. Raymond Jameson then has his own son named Martin Jameson. So this is now the great-grandnephew of our guy, George Jameson. Martin Jameson is on Facebook, and his Facebook profile is a photo of is George's brother, and I was floored. I stumbled across, of all the Facebook profiles in the world, a profile of someone who has a photo of the guy that we're looking for. So we ended up getting him on the phone in England. He's in North Yorkshire.
Hello.
Hi, is Martin there, please?
I'm just speaking to him. How are you doing?
Hi, Martin. My name's Andrew Duffy. I'm a reporter with the Ottawa Citizen in Canada.
How are you doing?
Good. Well, we kind of have an odd story to unfold for you. So we do this thing every year where there's a name that's randomly generated by a Twitter bot, and we produce sort of a one-day profile of that soldier. And in this case, this year, it was a Private George Jameson, whose name was generated. And,
Right.
and so we've found out a fair bit about him. He was born in England, born in Appleby.
That's right.
Came to
He's
Canada.
my great-granddad's brother.
Your great-granddad's brother. So,
Yeah, along with William as well.
as long as William, right. So William and George came to Canada in 1906. His whole name is George Jameson. And he was one of 8 kids born in this tiny town of Appleby in northern England. His mother died when he was 5. His father was a grocer. And so they were relatively prosperous, I guess, until the mother died. But then the father had difficulty looking after all these kids. He goes to live with another family nearby and apprentices as a mason. And then decides to come to Canada with his brother, who's a carpenter. And they come across land in Montreal, but they're destined for Winnipeg because apparently they got free passage because they were both skilled laborers. And so Winnipeg at the time was a booming gateway city to the west. And then he enlists right away after the outbreak of the First World War. He enlists within 10 days of England declaring war.
Jameson was a member of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, which is an interesting regiment. It was raised by a guy named Hamilton Gould, a millionaire from Montreal, privately raised a regiment. And I think almost 90% of the recruits were British citizens who identified more with the mother country than Canada. And a lot of them came from out west. They came to Ottawa and were mustered at Lansdowne Park and sent overseas. And they were the first Canadian troops into the battle lines, and they were serving with the British Army. They were a Canadian unit within the British Army.
We know he goes across to England on a troop ship in October. He gets to Britain and leaves Britain just before Christmas of 1914. So he departs Britain just before Christmas 1914 to head to Belgium.
And Jameson, we don't know what happened, but you just can get a sense of how horrible that would have been for the regiment. On the Ypres salient, the Canadians had already been subjected to a gas attack, the first German use of gas during the First World War. And so they survived that, and then they withstood this tremendous onslaught. And they held the line, famously held the line, and went into a regimental war that the Princess Pats had held the line against this massive German attack. The regiment then went on to fight through Passchendaele and Vimy Ridge, but that was really their first real test of fire.
And we know he's buried. Well, he doesn't actually have a gravestone. He's part of a larger monument in Belgium. Well, that's the thing. Now I kind of feel like we have a very rich picture of George, and I mean, especially insofar as it's, he was born in the 1880s, but we've been able to find his relatives, find pictures of him, and provide a relatively detailed history of his life, in one day, starting from almost nothing. So really, I think it's one of those things that couldn't happen without the whole team here and without social media, because it wouldn't have happened otherwise.
In England, again, could not find them. Oh, hold on. I've just been sent a photo.
No.
Boom! 2! Just got a photo of him. Unbelievable. Wow. So Martin, this is happening right now, so I might as well say it while I'm on camera. Martin Jameson, the great-grandnephew, has just sent me in a message 2 photos of George Jameson that from, I guess, before the war. You can see them right here. Unbelievable. And second photo. Holy moly. What are the odds?